War is often remembered through battles, weapons, and generals. But behind every war, there are silent victims whose stories were never written into the history books. During the Vietnam War, millions of Vietnamese women lived between fear and survival. They were not soldiers. They carried no weapons, yet they were forced to face violence from those who were supposed to be protectors. In villages across South Vietnam, the presence of foreign troops changed daily life forever. Women were questioned, searched, detained, often without cause. Many were treated not as human beings, but as objects of suspicion or worse. Numerous historical investigations and survivor testimonies reveal a painful truth. Some Vietnamese women were sexually abused, assaulted, or coerced by individual soldiers during military operations. These acts were not accidents of war. They were crimes. Most victims could not speak. Fear of shame, fear of retaliation, fear of being killed kept their suffering locked inside silence. Some women were assaulted during night raids, others while being interrogated. Some never returned home. Their names were erased, their pain undocumented. War did not only destroy cities, it destroyed dignity, bodies, and futures. These stories, buried for decades, represent a chapter of the war that is rarely discussed. For the women who endured this, the war never truly ended. The trauma they carried was a private battlefield, fought daily in the quiet of their minds. When the fighting ceased and the soldiers went home, these women were left to piece together shattered lives in a society that often blamed them for what they had suffered. The physical scars might have faded, but the psychological wounds remained, passed down through generations. Imagine being a young woman, going about your day, when suddenly your home is invaded. You are seen not as a daughter, a sister, or a mother, but as a potential enemy, or worse, an object for exploitation. This was the reality for countless women. Their homes, which should have been sanctuaries, became sites of terror. We must ask ourselves, why have these stories been so marginalized? Part of the answer lies in the nature of war itself. Official histories tend to focus on grand strategies and heroic narratives, glossing over the brutal realities faced by civilians. The experiences of women, particularly sexual violence, are often deemed too sensitive, too shameful, or simply too inconvenient to the patriotic stories nations tell about themselves. Furthermore, for the survivors, speaking out was fraught with danger. In a post-war society struggling to rebuild, bringing up these atrocities could be seen as divisive or Many women feared they would be ostracized by their own communities, accused of consorting with the enemy, even though they were victims of brutal force. Their silence was a means of survival, a way to protect their families and what little they had left. However, in recent years, courageous survivors have begun to share their testimonies. Historians and journalists have worked tirelessly to uncover documents, military records, and eyewitness accounts that corroborate these painful truths. For instance, investigations into events like the My Lai massacre brought some of these atrocities to light, but they represented only the tip of the iceberg. Countless other incidents in numerous other hamlets went unreported and unpunished. The testimonies that have emerged are harrowing. They speak of promises broken, of trust violated, and of humanity lost. One survivor recounted how soldiers would enter her village demanding food, and then turn to violence when their demands escalated. Another spoke of being taken away for questioning and enduring days of abuse before being released back into her village, forever changed. These are not just stories of victimization, they are stories of incredible resilience. Many of these women went on to raise families, rebuild their communities, and contribute to the healing of their nation, all while carrying an immense, unspoken burden. Their strength in the face of unimaginable adversity is a testament to the human spirit. Recognizing their suffering is not about assigning collective guilt or rewriting history to fit a particular agenda. It's about acknowledging the full, complex, and often ugly truth of what happens during armed conflict. It's about understanding that the cost of war is measured not just in soldier casualties, but in the civilian lives that are irrevocably damaged. It is about ensuring that the term collateral damage never again serves to obscure the suffering of real human beings. The impact of this violence extended far beyond the individuals who directly experienced it. It tore at the social fabric of entire communities. Men were often powerless to protect their wives, sisters, and daughters, leading to deep feelings of shame and anger. Children witnessed acts of violence that no child should ever see. The trust between villagers and foreign forces, which was often tenuous to begin with, was completely shattered. This created a cycle of fear and hostility that fueled the conflict further. The war became not just a battle between armies, but a war on the civilian population itself, where the lines between combatant and non-combatant were deliberately blurred. The bodies of women became another territory to be conquered and controlled, a brutal tactic to demoralize and terrorize the population. Why is it crucial to talk about this now, so many decades later? Because history, if not fully understood, is doomed to repeat itself. In conflicts around the world today, sexual violence continues to be used as a weapon of war. By confronting the painful past of the Vietnam War, we can better understand the patterns and mechanisms that allow such atrocities to occur. It forces us to ask difficult questions about military culture, accountability, and the responsibilities of occupying forces. It challenges the sanitized versions of war presented in movies and textbooks and demands that we look at the human cost. For the survivors, many of whom are now elderly, telling their stories is a final act of defiance, a way to reclaim their narrative and ensure that their experiences are not forgotten. It is a plea for justice, not necessarily in a court of law, but in the court of historical memory. Acknowledging this history also serves a vital purpose for healing. For veterans, confronting the full scope of the war, including the crimes committed by some, can be a difficult but necessary part of processing their own experiences and trauma. It moves beyond a simple hero-villain narrative and allows for a more nuanced understanding of the moral complexities of war. For the Vietnamese people, it validates the suffering that was hidden for so long and honors the memory of the victims. It allows for a national conversation about trauma and recovery, helping to break the cycles of silence and shame that have persisted for generations. True reconciliation between former enemies can only happen when the whole truth is on the table, no matter how painful it may be. The stories of these Vietnamese women are a powerful reminder that the consequences of war are deep and long-lasting. They challenge us to expand our definition of a war victim and a war hero. A hero isn't just someone who fights on the battlefield. It's also the woman who survives an assault and finds the strength to raise her children. It is the survivor who breaks decades of silence to speak her truth so that others might learn from it. The resilience is a form of resistance. Their survival is a victory. By listening to their voices, we honor their struggle and take a small step toward a world where such atrocities are no longer tolerated. We owe it to them, and to future generations, to remember not just the battles and the strategies, but the human stories that lie at the heart of war. It is important to remember that these were not sanctioned policies, but criminal acts committed by individuals that went against military law. However, a failure of leadership to prevent and punish such crimes created an environment where they could occur. The records that do exist, such as declassified military investigation files, show that while some soldiers were prosecuted, many cases were poorly investigated or dismissed. The system often failed the victims. This systemic failure is a crucial part of the story. It highlights the need for robust accountability mechanisms within any military organization, especially during times of conflict. The fog of war can never be an excuse for abandoning our shared humanity. As we reflect on this dark chapter, let us commit to memory. Let's remember the names that were erased and the stories that were silenced. Let's support organizations that work to document these histories and provide support for survivors of wartime violence. Let's educate ourselves and others about the true costs of war, especially its impact on women and civilians. By doing so, we turn memory into a force for change. The stories of these women are not just a record of past suffering. They are a call to action, a demand for a future where dignity and human rights are protected, even in the midst of conflict. Their legacy is a powerful lesson in empathy, justice, and the enduring quest for peace. If you or someone you know is a survivor of violence or is dealing with trauma, please know that help is available. There are organizations and resources dedicated to providing support and counseling. Seeking help is a sign of strength. The information for some of these resources can be found in the description below. Thank you for taking the time to listen to these important stories. If this video resonated with you, please consider sharing it to help raise awareness. Subscribe for more content that delves into the forgotten corners of history. Your engagement helps keep these vital conversations alive. Thank you. Have you ever wondered about the stories that history books leave out? The ones that are too painful, too complicated, or too inconvenient to tell? Today, we're going to talk about one of those stories. It's a difficult one, but it's a story that needs to be heard. We're going back to the Vietnam War, a conflict that has been dissected from so many angles: political, military, strategic. But there's a deeply personal, human dimension that has remained in the shadows for far too long. The widespread use of sexual violence against Vietnamese women. This isn't just a footnote in history. It was a deliberate and brutal tactic of war. For countless Vietnamese women, the end of a battle didn't mean the beginning of safety. Survival itself was a fraught and dangerous state. Imagine enduring the horrors of war, only to be met with suspicion and accusation from your own community. This was the tragic reality for many. Some survivors were branded as collaborators, accused of consorting with the enemy simply because they were victims of enemy soldiers. The very violence inflicted upon them was twisted into a mark of betrayal. In the chaos and paranoia of war, some were even executed without a proper trial, their lives extinguished based on rumor and prejudice. Others simply vanished, swallowed by the conflict, their fates unknown to their families forever. They became ghosts in their own history, their stories erased before they could even be told. It is crucial to understand that sexual violence in war is never just a random act of cruelty by rogue individuals. It's a weapon, a calculated, devastating weapon. Its purpose is to do more than just harm a single person. It's designed to silence, to humiliate, and to break the spirit not just of the victim, but of their entire community. When a woman is attacked, the act sends a shockwave of terror and shame through her family, her village, her people. It's a message of domination, a way of saying, we can do anything to you, and there is nothing you can do to stop us. It destroys the social fabric, planting seeds of mistrust and fear that can last for generations. It's a strategy as old as war itself, and in Vietnam, it was deployed with chilling effectiveness. One of the most profound injustices of this history is the almost total lack of accountability. In the context of the Vietnam War, very few perpetrators of sexual violence were ever brought to justice. Think about that! An epidemic of brutality, and yet, a deafening silence from the justice system. Most cases were simply ignored. Official reports were never filed. When they were, they were often dismissed or denied outright. The stories of these women were systematically erased from the official record. It was as if their suffering didn't matter, as if their bodies were just another part of the battlefield, their trauma an acceptable cost of conflict. This denial of justice is a second assault, a betrayal that tells survivors their pain is insignificant, their truth is inconvenient. Decades have passed since the war ended, but for the survivors, the war never truly left. Trauma isn't just a memory. It's a physical and emotional reality that they carry every single day. It lives in their bodies, in chronic pain, in sleepless nights. It lives in their memories, in flashbacks that can be triggered by a sound, a smell, a face. The psychological scars are deep and enduring, and because of the shame and stigma attached to what happened, many of these women never spoke about it. Not to their friends, not to their neighbors, and heartbreakingly, not even to their own children. They carried this immense burden in complete silence, isolated by a secret that was too heavy to share. This silence was not a choice. It was a cage built by fear, shame, and a world that wasn't ready to listen. Let's not forget who these women were. They weren't abstract statistics or collateral damage. They were mothers who worried about their children. They were daughters who dreamed of a future. They were sisters who loved and were loved. They were the heart of their communities. They deserved protection. They deserved safety. They deserved respect. Instead, they received violence in its most intimate and degrading form. Their humanity was stripped away, their lives forever altered by acts of unspeakable cruelty. Acknowledging this isn't about placing blame decades later. It's about restoring the humanity that was stolen from them. It's about seeing them not as victims, but as individuals with full, rich lives that were violently interrupted. Remembering these stories is not an act of reopening old wounds to spread hatred or point fingers. The goal isn't revenge. The goal is truth. It asks about looking at our shared history with clear eyes and acknowledging the full scope of human suffering. It asks about giving these women back the dignity that was taken from them, the dignity of being heard, of being believed, of being remembered. And most importantly, it is about learning a vital lesson. By understanding how and why these atrocities happened, by refusing to let them be forgotten, we strengthen our collective resolve to ensure that such crimes are never again justified, never again dismissed, and never again repeated in any conflict anywhere in the world. This is our responsibility to them and to future generations. If you believe, as I do, that these forgotten voices deserve to be heard, that their stories matter, then please help us amplify them. Your engagement makes a real difference. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe to our channel, Whispering History Tales. By doing so, you help us continue our mission to uncover the stories that have been left in the shadows. Because history isn't just about the powerful, the victors, or the grand strategies. It's about the people who suffered in silence, whose resilience and pain are woven into the very fabric of our past. Thank you for listening. If you want to watch the next chapters of the Vietnam War, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Whispering History Tales. Thanks for watching.